Separate the real from the fake. See, we got to get back to love. If we get back to love, then that's when we're going to get back to us.
It seems like it's never enough. And what do you say when you're...
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of People Empowerment, where we would strive to change the conditions in our neighborhoods. My name is Nate Boyd, and I am your host of People Empowerment. Today we have a guest who has been here before. It's an information man, an information specialist, and he's here to disseminate the information we need. Here we have today is Judge Carney. How you doing,
How
sir?
are you? Nice
Judge
to see you again.
Nice
Pleasure
to see you
to be
again
back.
also, sir. You know, we had Judge Carney on. He had a lot of information for us, but the time flew by so fast, so we had a time to go over it. I've been getting calls, you know, about this housing court and the way things work, so the judge was considered enough to come down, and we're going to have a series. So we're going to have this show, and we're going to have 2 shows more talking about housing court, tenant-landlord relationships, and those type of things, eviction, and everything that encompasses that tenant-landlord housing dispute type of thing. Okay, so we have the expert here, Judge Carney. How you feel today, sir? How you doing?
I feel fabulous every day.
Every day you feel
Every
fabulous?
day's a blessing.
That's awesome.
Every day's a blessing.
Now, you know, I don't know if you guys know out there, but Judge Carney's a city court judge. There are city court elections this year. So Judge Carney is up for election.
Yes, I am.
How you feeling about that?
You know, normally I feel really good about that because last time I ran unopposed.
Oh, that make you feel good.
10 years later, Buffalo's going to have a unique opportunity to elect a brand new city court judge. The legislature has, after 12 years of asking, granted the city of Buffalo a 14th city court judge.
Oh, really?
So there's my seat, and then there's a vacant seat, and there's, I believe, about somewhere 4 or 5 other candidates, but we do run as a pool. So there's 2 seats. There'll be a number of candidates. One of them will be me, and then a number of other qualified attorneys who are seeking that open seat. But if it so happens that they get mine, they'll take it.
Okay, so now we have you're actually the incumbent.
Right.
And we have 4 other lawyers,
Right.
pre-judges, whatever, that are going for the position.
Yes.
There's 2 positions.
Yes.
And we got 5
2
candidates running for it.
Right. So
And how does it work? The 2 guys that
2
get the
vote
highest
getters.
votes.
Yes. Top 2 vote
Good.
getters in the September primary, because we are in the city of Buffalo, and the September Democratic primary is very dominant. On a rare occasions, people have won without that. Kevin Helfer in University, Mayor Griffin years ago always won without the Democratic primary. But for us mere mortals, it's pretty much a primary race in September.
Okay, so basically what you're saying, if you don't win in September, you don't win.
You're done. You're
So
out.
are you telling the people they need to come out?
They need to come out in September. They always need, in the city of Buffalo, folks always need to come out in the primaries. You have a number of couple of other primary races. You don't have a lot of, you know, there's not going to be a governor's primary. There's no mayor's race. A lot of the council races are not there. But you do have, you know, you have a state senate race that will pretty much be decided in the primary. That's always a very important race. You have a school board race in May, very important race. To me, all races, all elections, from school board to the President of the United States, are really important. And people have died for our right to go out and vote, and we should honor that by getting off our couch, going out on primary day and on election day, and go out and vote. And if you don't vote, don't complain.
You know what? I couldn't have said it better. You said that like a pastor. You know what I mean?
Reverend Bridget says I should. I could be a second calling for him.
because it's just like the faith. It's just like religion. If you don't exercise your faith,
Right.
then don't go complaining about what God or Buddha or Allah, or whoever is your creator,
in store
does
for
for you.
you.
That's right.
Right.
You know, because it's a two-sided party. It's
Yep.
a two-way street. So, Your Honor, just to stay in the election a little bit more before we get back into the housing court thing, if you could just explain to the people and explain to me, I mean, I kind of know you, history from way back in the days, but maybe you could explain to the public, now that you're running for election, just who you are.
Who I am?
Briefly.
Briefly. I became an attorney in 1982. I worked for the Public Defender's Office, Legal Aid Office for 10 years. I had my own practice. I became a judge in 1993. I was elected in 94. In a similar situation, I was elected, 4 seats were open, there were 10 candidates. So that was a real bloodbath. Then in 2004, I was reelected, so I've been a judge for 21 years now. I have worked in Buffalo City Court. I am an acting county court judge, which means I've done felony trials, criminal trials. I've done civil trials. Most of my time was spent as a criminal court judge. And a little over 2 years ago, Judge Nowak left housing court to go to Supreme Court. And Judge Amadeo asked me if I would take over housing court because we were going to lose 4 staff members. And he wanted somebody with experience in there because it is a very public court. It's a very important court.
Oh, yes.
It doesn't get the recognition that it should get. It doesn't get oftentimes the respect that it should get. But I have visited every block club in the city of Buffalo, and there are 500 of them. And people want to know when houses are going to get fixed, how they're going to get fixed.
Yes, they do.
When their neighborhoods are going to be improved. These are what in politics is known as quality of life issues. And there's no more important quality of life issue than the housing stock in Buffalo.
You know, I hear a lot of passion in your voice. I hear a lot of passion in your conversation about what you're doing. So have you developed a love for housing court?
I am slowly developing a love for housing court. I like to joke and say that my former good friend, Chief Judge Tom Amadeo, appointed me to housing court, and that's why he's my former friend. But, I love Judge Amadeo. We've been friends for many, many years, and I now appreciate the opportunity to really see how important this is.
Maybe you could explain to the people out there what it's like when you make these decisions. Do you ever make decisions on emotion, or is it just strictly the law, strictly within the constraints of the law? Can you be honest?
You don't ever want to make a decision based on emotion. You can make decisions and rulings based on passion, based on compassion, based on the law. We are sworn to uphold the law, so that always has to come first. But there's always, the law is a lot like a rubber band. You can kind of stretch it, twist it, move it, but you always have to stay within the confines of the law, the statutes that exist. Housing court is basically 2 things. It's homeowners who just need help. It's the elderly, the sick, the people that have lost their jobs or their employment, and their housing is falling apart. It's maybe an 86-year-old woman who's lived in Hamlin Park for 50 years, and she just can't physically get that house in the order that it always was in. And then there's the real estate investors. We are much tougher on the investors. We're much tougher where the issue is money. How much money you're making, how much money do you want to spend? And this is something that happens in everyday life everywhere. There's parking spaces downtown Buffalo today going for $60 to see a basketball game. That same parking space is $10 next week. It's a matter of making your money when you can make it. So with the real estate investors, the landlords, the investors, we're a little tougher. We want to see things done faster. We want to see things done properly.
So you have compassion for the people.
But the people that are just hurting, you have to have compassion for them. And their neighbors who do the complaining, that's why I tell people, let's find out who's there. Let's see what the circumstances are. And let's see if somebody needs help. And the neighbors then are the first people to come to the aid of an individual who they filed the complaint on. Once they find out that the house is owned by a 93-year-old woman who has Alzheimer's and she's in a nursing home. And we're trying to move that home through the process of being sold. But in the meantime, the lawns need to be mowed or the driveway needs to be shoveled. That's when the neighbors really come together. That's when they really try to help out. The problem is getting that information. Everybody thinks that all bad homes are owned by slumlords, and they're not. They're not owned by slumlords.
that is a proper
Some of them are
common
owned by nice
perception.
people.
Judge Carney, if you could think of one reason after your 21 years as being a judge, one reason that you could give people before we get into it to vote for you, to be a judge for, what is it, 4 more years?
10 more years.
10 more years.
10 more years.
If there was one reason you could, well, maybe if there was a couple of reasons that you could
One
give
reason
people.
to vote for me?
For 10 more years, yeah, Judge. For 10 more years.
For 10 more years, people should vote for me because I've probably forgotten more about being a judge than any of the other candidates will know at this point in time.
That's the reason?
Experience.
Experience, yeah.
Experience. Being there, seeing it, doing it, having a background as a trial attorney, as somebody that had clients and worked for people, somebody that accepted that same grandmother's last check to help her grandson in a legal fashion or in a legal way. And I do have a passion for it. I love it. And I'm kind of known as one of the judges. We're all so cooperative with each other, but I will go wherever I'm needed. I've done trials in Dunkirk, Jamestown. I've done felony trials in criminal cases, housing court, city court. I've seen it all, done it all, and I love what I'm doing. I still have this intense passion to go out there and help the people that need help and make sure that the people who aren't doing what they're supposed to do either get in line or get punished properly.
Well, guys, there you have it. Judge Carney, in his own words, who he is and the reason why we should bring him back as city court judge for 10 more years. That's a serious time frame. That's a serious commitment. So I guess if the man is up for the task, let's evaluate the contestants and let's pick the best man. And if that's Judge Carney, then that's Judge Carney.
That's right. I mean, but please vote.
Whatever happens, absolutely.
Look at all the candidates. Look at everything that you want to know. Know your candidates. Talk to people who are in the know. And make a choice and then go and pull a lever. Please, pull a lever.
Absolutely, that makes sense.
Get out there.
Get out there, get out there. September primary, so important,
Right.
make the primary body. And now we're gonna get into housing court, okay? Housing court 101. Okay, so now we're gonna go back over a couple of things that we talked about the last time you were here in the show. We were talking about housing court, Your Honor. And one of the main things that we talked about was warranty of habitability.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So now, if we could just start breaking down the components of the warranty of habitability. I know there's different sections, so would you?
In any landlord-tenant case, when we get a case, especially where the tenant is withholding rent, and the tenant is openly withholding rent, there must be a specific purpose to withhold the rent. And in a warranty of habitability situation, where a judge could say, you don't owe any rent, or you only owe 20% of your rent. It has to involve the livability of that space. In other words, it must involve heat, hot water, electricity, a roof that keeps the water out. Those are warranty of habitability issues.
These are the mandatory issues.
Yes, you are entitled to these things no matter where you live. No matter what the circumstances.
Hot water,
heat, electricity, a roof that holds
no leaky
the
roof.
weather out, and windows that hold the weather out.
and windows that hold
Yes.
the weather out.
Now, if you have a window that's cracked or broken, will that create a situation where you don't have to pay rent? Probably not, but you can withhold it until it's fixed. The key, like we talked to before, is when you withhold rent, you must be withholding the rent. That means you have to have it.
You have to have it in
You
hand.
have to have that
You
money
can't take
when
it and
you
spend
walk
it.
into court. Right. Because now you're not withholding rent, you're spending the rent. And that makes all of us very suspicious of your true intentions here. So if you're withholding the rent because you have a hot water tank issue, what you should do is you should send that landlord a written notice, an email, a text message, a letter saying, my hot water tank does not work, has not worked such and such a time, I am not paying rent till that hot water tank is fixed.
Right.
And have a copy of it.
Your Honor, hold that thought. Listen, everybody, we're going to be right back. We're going to take a pause for the cause. We're going to be right back in a moment. Until then, keep paying attention. This is Nate Boyd from People Empowerment telling you pay attention, pay attention, pay attention.
Very impressive, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thought he was pretty good.
I think we've got enough color around here. 2 points. And who's next?
You drop this.
Imagine the power of one voice. Find yours at freedomcenter.org.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back with People Empowerment. As the commercial just said, imagine the power of one voice. Well, I say imagine the power of all of our voices together, speaking as one. I would also remind you that you can go onto my website at peopleempowerment.apollomediacenter.com, and where you can see this shows and other shows. So there's valuable information on them. You can always go to the website and check it out. We're back here with Judge Carney. And Judge Carney, I wanted to go right back where we were at when we left off, to the warranty of habitability. And we were talking about the money, because it's so important, because many times people want to hold back their rent because the landlord hasn't addressed a major problem. But what you're telling me in the audience is that you can hold back that rent, but you cannot spend that rent,
Right.
and just in case you have to go to court, because once you go to court, you have to justify your actions, and the judge has to say, okay, you can keep that money.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Say your rent is $500 a month and you have an issue with your heat. So you may come into court, you may have withheld that rent, and the landlord's trying to evict you, and you come into court, and I, as a judge, find out you went a week without without heat. I may say, okay, you can stay, the eviction is dismissed, you're not evicting this person because they had no heat, and you get $250 or $300. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to pay what I order immediately.
Right there.
That's the nature of withholding rent. Notice the two words are with and holding, so you still are holding it, you have it. If you're not able to pay what I order, then the eviction's going to go through, even though you had no heat for a week.
Wow.
It seems unfair, but the only way you can win without having, because the statute actually says that the tenant must show good faith in a withholding rent case by having that rent available.
Right.
It's not mandatory, but you'll find most of the judges in Buffalo City Court in most of the cases are going to demand that that rent be available. Then we know that you are sincere, you're honest, and you actually intended to pay your rent, but didn't pay it because the landlord wasn't doing what they were supposed to do, which is providing you these services.
So you can absolutely be right about withholding the rent
Right.
from the lack of services.
Yep.
But once you spend it without getting legal authorization
Yes.
from the right legal entity,
You may lose anyway.
then you may lose anyway and still get evicted.
Yep. We can carve exceptions out to that, but those exceptions are rare. Those exceptions are rare. Everybody has emergencies. Everybody has something happen. But the rent must not be paid for that reason and that reason only.
Now you say that once you do these type of complaints that if a landlord goes to evict you, that they can't evict you under those circumstances, right?
Right.
But I mean, how soon can they come back and try to evict you then? I mean, if you've gotten to a point now where your lease is spent up and you're a month to month, you haven't signed a new lease,
Yep.
and you run into this situation, now then you've won a lawsuit against your landlord. She tries to evict you, it doesn't work. Can she wait 3 months and evict you again? Or
They can,
you know what I'm asking?
without a lease, a landlord can evict any tenant for any reason or no reason with a 30-day notice.
Really?
A tenant can move at any time they want to with 30 days notice. The one safeguard that tenants have is what in the law is called a retaliatory eviction. In other words, you call the health department and you report issues with your apartment. Mm-hmm. The health department writes up the case, the landlord must then go in and fix it, and then they try to evict you. That can be a retaliatory eviction. In other words, the only reason they're evicting you is to retaliate for you making that report. And in those circumstances, the courts will not allow that eviction. But it does create a hostile environment which nobody should want to live in. So then it's really up to the tenant to decide when they want to move. But you never want to have a real hostile environment with your landlord. That's just going to be stress that nobody needs.
Okay, well now, as far as that goes, in your experience of doing this housing court, and you've got these issues, warranty of habitability, and now you got the issues, or you got the tenant versus the landlord issues. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had to adjudicate a case where it got violent and got out of hand right inside of your courtroom in housing court?
We've always had altercations in courtrooms. That's why
always?
For my 21 years. Oh yeah, absolutely. The security has changed over the years so that they're very, very, very rare now. We have metal detectors at the front doors. Every courtroom has at least one armed court officer in it. But people get hot and they start yelling and screaming. And to tell you the truth, on rare occasions, it's just like you see on TV.
Get out of here.
They need to be separated because they're yelling and screaming at each other. It doesn't happen very often because it, of course, creates a very bad impression before the person that you're adjudicating. Mm-hmm. I remember back in the very early 90s, when I was a very young judge and in much better shape, I jumped over the bench to help my court officer because there was a fight that involved about 7 or 8 young men.
Wow.
And they needed to be separated.
Right in the courtroom.
I was not going to let my deputy get hurt. And I got yelled at. I got yelled at by the lieutenant in charge of the sheriffs. I got yelled at by the chief judge.
Sounds like
so we don't do that anymore.
Sounds like another reason to vote for you, Judge.
we don't do
jump
that
over
anymore.
the bench and come help out?
After pretty much the security and the mannerisms in courtrooms have become such that that does not happen very often. It actually happens more often in a criminal courtroom or in family court. Mm-hmm. The sheriffs and the court officers are separating folks in family court all the time because emotions are very high in a family situation.
Now, I believe you were trying to explain to me that there's a difference between housing court versus tenant and landlord.
Landlord-tenant court.
Is that there's a difference?
Housing court used to do all of the landlord-tenant issues. But since we had those 4 layoffs, the lawyer that used to do them in housing court is no longer there. So now we have each judge in city court spends 30 days in what we call special term. Or hell, either one. And that special term judge hears all of the landlord-tenant cases for 30 days.
Okay.
And then it goes to the next judge. I still spend a month doing landlord-tenant. That special term judge also hears all emergency motions, all civil motions, is on call to the police 24 hours a day with a pager, because you have to sign all the search warrants, you have to interview all of the...
But what's an emergency moment?
Emergency motion?
Motion.
Usually they're civil in nature. It's a motion to freeze a bank account. It's a motion to unfreeze a bank account. It could be a motion, for example, in a commercial lease setting where the landlord is trying to lock out a business, and the lawyer will come in and ask for an order right now to prevent something from happening or to cause something to happen.
Okay.
So there are motions that just can't be filed. You know, if you have a case pending, you can file a motion in Buffalo City Court, and in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 30 days time, that motion will go before a judge. Both lawyers will schedule it and come in. Mm-hmm. These are motions that can't wait. These are things that must be done within a couple of days.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we have to read those motions, absorb those motions, listen to the lawyer's arguments. Have you ever seen a lawyer's motion now? They kill a lot of trees, lawyers. Some of those motions are 40, 50
of
pages
course.
long.
I've seen some even more.
And we have to render a decision often within 24 hours on those.
Now, As it goes back to tenant versus landlord, another thing we talked about briefly, we touched on it, was evictions. Now, could you, now once you've got a decision in court and the tenant has to leave,
Right.
you issue at that time a 72-hour notice to render the property if they...
The judges will issue a warrant of eviction, which means that essentially within 72 hours you must move.
Okay.
Now, the marshals who execute those orders, and they're very busy, men and women, generally they will be there between 5 and 6 days to execute that warrant. Under certain circumstances, the judges in Buffalo City Court do have the authority to say grant an extra 7 days or 10 days.
Okay.
Unless the law specifically allows it, we generally can't go, an extra month or 20 or 30 days.
But on your discretion.
But in our discretion, we can grant an extra couple of days.
Oh, that's something
If it's
interesting
necessary.
for people to know.
Because what you're asking is, usually when people are asking for extensions to move, they're not offering money.
Right.
They're not offering the rent. They want an extra 7 or 8 days free,
Okay,
essentially.
free, yeah.
And there are circumstances wherein we grant that. We definitely do grant that. Something that people don't understand is you do have slumlords in every community, in every city, in every place in the world. You have professional landlords who don't fix their properties, who are always in housing court. But you also have professional tenants. You have tenants that are trying not to pay rent, or they're trying to extend that, time to move without paying rent. And it's up to the courts to decide whether you are a good landlord, whether you are a good tenant, how much time you should, you deserve. There's black letter law in all of this, but the judges do have leeway in it. And if you go in there and you present evidence, a case, not just you say something and the landlord says something, bring those judges something physical, an email, photographs. Photographs are very powerful. Estimates from repair companies. Walk in there prepared to be in court. You don't have to be a lawyer to take your cell phone and take pictures of the window that's broken.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be sophisticated to send a letter to somebody or to send a text message. Text messages now are writings. They can be preserved. You can keep it on your phone forever.
It's funny how you say that, because in the next session that we have, because our time is cutting down, I wanted to talk specifically about the informations and proofs that a person should bring to court with them. So that's something we're going to talk about next time. And also, next time we come in, I want to talk about quality of life issues.
Yes.
Okay, because a lot of this stuff has to do with the quality of life.
The issues that are not warranty of habitability, but should be fixed or should be addressed. When can you withhold rent? What can you do to fix the quality? What's a quality of life issue? Your bathroom floor needs to be fixed, or your carpet needs to be replaced.
But not to get in
those
now, but
things.
I just want to let you all know and get into it, because time is really cutting down.
Okay.
And also,
Goes fast,
next
doesn't
week, it does fly by. And also next week, though, as far as the tenants, I also want to talk, I want to have information from the landlord's perspective, what a landlord also needs to have to
Yes.
prove his point, so that we can give an equal playing field to both sides.
And I
You
do
know what I'm
lecture
saying,
to
Judge?
landlord groups.
You do lecture to
Oh
landlord
yeah,
groups.
I'm part of the Erie County Bar Association holds seminars, and I lecture to landlords to educate them. Knowledge is power. You got to have knowledge.
This is very important, everybody, and the judge is right. Knowledge is absolutely power. Knowledge, and that's what we bring to you here at People Empowerment. We bring you knowledge. So please go to the website, watch the program, pay attention to what's going on. We're trying to give you information that's going to help you. Information is power. Until next time, this is Nate Boyd from People Empowerment and Judge Carney saying, pay attention, pay attention,
Pleasure, Nate.
pay attention.